our General Assembly does affect our personal lives. Do you even know what they do or why we would even care? Let's look at 3 areas that affect us all and our wallets: education, taxation, and elections.
Oh yeah, I really do want to know more. Thanks, Em.
Yep.
Well, Em, for instance, I'm concerned about education, which obviously affects economic growth, and I know we all care about the children in this county. So, how much power does the General Assembly have on public education? Which I do realize is about 60% of the total budget.
Yeah, so I recently learned that the General Assembly can use their funding powers to improve education, mainly by attracting more qualified educators.
Yeah, but how do you attract more qualified educators?
Great question. So through teacher and staff salaries and benefits. As the General Assembly balances the state budget, no deficits allowed, they decide how much of our tax money to pay for educators' salaries, and in order to attract the most qualified educators.
All right, I get it. Better salaries, better benefits.
Yep.
You're going to get more qualified educators.
Yep.
Yeah. But any other powers to improve education?
Yes, so they're also responsible for technology and transportation, both of which are a much smaller portion of the budget.
Okay. Well, we are all affected by the General Assembly's decisions about education. Our quality of life, our economic growth, they all depend on an excellent education. I better start paying more attention. Yeah, it's important to understand the General Assembly's powers before voting. But, how does the General Assembly pay for all this education?
With the North Carolina taxes that we pay.
Okay, Em, you definitely have my attention because I do care about taxes and I care about tax rates. So how can the General Assembly and their tax policies affect me and my wallet?
Yes, so the General Assembly sets your individual income and sales tax rates. The individual income tax rate at 4.75% is the largest source of revenue for North Carolina. So for example, if your personal income is $30,000, then you will pay $1,425 in taxes. But the General Assembly can change this rate, higher or lower, and has actually lowered the rate from 4.75% in 2023 to 3.99% after 2025.
Okay, that's interesting. Then the personal income tax is tax on what I earn.
Yep.
But there's also the North Carolina sales tax, which brings in a slightly smaller amount for the General Assembly.
Yes.
So, for example, if I buy $100 worth of groceries, I'll pay $4.75 in the sales tax rate. Okay. Well, we all want to remember the General Assembly can raise or lower the personal income tax or the sales tax rate.
Correct. So our wallets and the services such as elections, voting, and education provided by the state are affected by the decisions of the General Assembly. So it's important that we want to understand their powers before we vote.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
All right, but how do they know how to set the rate? Are voters important? Are elections important?
So I know elections and voting regulations are always interesting and do affect me. I've heard a lot of comments about both. But how is the General Assembly involved?
Okay, the General Assembly writes the laws, for instance, about voter ID and the absentee ballot process. All votes are important. We want all votes counted. There have been elections in Forsyth County determined by just one vote. And what if your vote was the one that chose that candidate?
Yeah, And that's why the new guidelines are important to know. But it's still getting so complicated. I'm sure there's a link at the end of this video with specific information.
Probably. Well, writing laws is complicated, and writing election laws, very complicated. One very complicated topic is redistricting, drawing the district lines. Basically, redistricting is drawing district lines that represent the districts from which members of the North Carolina House of Representatives and the North Carolina Senate, together the General Assembly, are elected. The General Assembly establishes and draws these lines.
Oh, but could you explain a little bit further about how the courts are sometimes involved with redistricting?
Oh, sure. The General Assembly can be sued by citizens or citizen groups who believe that these drawn districts have hurt the voters. Sometimes the North Carolina Supreme Court can draw the lines themselves. Important and topic of our next video.
Wow, so I guess decisions dealing with voting in elections include legal implications that I had not even considered. So see, that's why we're all affected by the decisions of the General Assembly, and you want to understand their powers before you vote.